What's up, vault dwellers? You know, before content warnings, PG-13 ratings, and Hollywood worrying about crossing lines, there were Grindhouse theaters. These urban cinemas ran movies that were just pure, unfiltered cinematic insanity that mainstream theaters, they wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. Today, we're diving into 13 boundary-pushing Grindhouse films, from cannibal butchers to vengeful nuns, from alien bloodsuckers to chainsaw-wielding maniacs. These films pushed every button they could find. All right, let's get grinding.
To be the work of a master sculptor, and indeed so it is. That master sculptor is in our midst. He is none other than Walter Paisley, our very own busboy.
Roger Corman, the godfather of B-movies, delivered this pitch-black comedy about a socially awkward busboy named Walter who becomes a celebrated artist by covering murder victims in clay. It's basically if Norman Bates from Psycho decided to open an Etsy shop. It's a perfect entry point to the world of exploitation cinema. I just love how it satires the pretentious art world while simultaneously delivering genuine creepiness. Walter's descent into murderous madness is played for both laughs and scares, with Corman's camera lingering just long enough on the killings to make you uncomfortable. The Beatniks setting gives us hilariously dated dialogue with gems like, "Life is an obscure hobo, bumming a ride on the omnibus of art." This film walked so films like Texas Chainsaw Massacre could run. With chainsaws, of course.
Been a lot of accidents happening around here lately. What do you hear about Big Joe Rosso's rig flipping?
Oh, that was a shame. Wasn't that a shame?
Yeah, I can't drive.
Imagine watching Walking Tall and thinking, you know, this needs more monster trucks. That's rolling vengeance in a nutshell. After a group of drunken rednecks kills his family, a young trucker builds a monster truck of doom to mete out vehicular justice. This film gives us the cinematic gift of watching a grieving son literally building a vengeance vehicle, complete with skull hood ornament and giant spikes. The death scenes are both brutal and hilariously improbable, with people being squished, impaled, and in one memorable scene, the guy gets his head caught between the monster truck's massive tires like a watermelon at a Gallagher show. When our hero finally catches up to the main villain, the film delivers a death scene so satisfying you want to stand up and cheer. Or at least crush a beer can in solidarity.
I was hoping you wouldn't do this.
So this is why you no longer use the animals. Human transplants.
This Italian exploitation explores the concept of, what if Dr. Frankenstein had a daughter who was just way kinkier? When her father is killed by his own creation, Tanya Frankenstein decides to continue the family business with a twist, creating her perfect man by putting the brain of her elderly assistant into the body of a handsome simpleton. I'm pretty sure this violates both medical ethics and HR guidelines. There's a sultry quality to Tanya's madness as she coldly calculates her perfect mate, making her perhaps the most fascinating female mad scientist in cinema history. The monster effects are that special kind of Italian B-movie practical work, simultaneously cheap-looking, but yet somehow very effective. The climactic showdown between the original monster and Tanya's custom-made boyfriend, it's like watching the world's most disturbing love triangle, and I'm here for every twisted minute of it. This film has possibly the most misleading title in cinema history, as there is zero skin eating throughout its entire runtime. Originally titled Zombie Bloodbath, it was shelved for years until it was paired with the film I Drink Your Blood in 1971 to create the most appetizingly titled double feature ever. The plot follows a novelist who visits a tropical island for research and discovers voodoo zombies created by a mad doctor. Classic vacation, right? What makes this film so entertaining is how it walks the line between genuine island adventure and just complete nonsense. The zombies look like they've been wearing pancake makeup and have ping pong balls for eyes, yet the film treats them with deadly seriousness. There's this bizarre charm to watching actors in suits running through jungle sets, fighting zombies that look like they were made by a drunk kindergarten teacher, and the voodoo ceremonies have all the cultural accuracy of a tiki bar designed by someone who once saw a postcard from Hawaii.
There's a riot in cell block 3. Oh, Blanche. Well, that sounds like fun. I'll be right there. Riot in cell block 3. Riot in cell block.
This 2003 film is a knowing parody of women in prison exploitation films, and I'm sure it probably never played in an actual Grindhouse theater. But we're just going to talk about it for a minute. We've got mad scientists, time travel, kung fu fighting, shower scenes, and prisoners who somehow all have access to makeup and perfect hairstyling despite being incarcerated. It's like someone watched 50 exploitation films, dropped them in a blender, and filmed whatever splattered on the wall. Prison A Go-Go lovingly mocks the women in prison genre while also being a perfect example of it. The film knows exactly what it's doing with its ridiculous plot and over-the-top characters, including a mad scientist trying to create a zombie army and a time-traveling 80s Valley girl. It's both a tribute to and a roast of films like Caged Heat and The Big Bird Cage. It managed to be genuinely funny while delivering the exploitation goods that fans of the genre expect.
Just can't bear those parties for fat girls.
I'm the fat girl.
I know. Can you pilot a plane?
This psychedelic exploitation film feels like it was written by someone who ate a pound of mushrooms and then tried to adapt an F. Scott Fitzgerald novel. A rock star named Bogart who seduces a rich, overweight debutante while also sleeping with her mother, and eventually leads the entire family into a spiral of sex, drugs, and skydiving. Yeah, skydiving, because apparently free-falling from an airplane, it's the perfect metaphor for this film's moral compass. Director Robert Thom was clearly aiming for a scathing critique of wealth and celebrity, but ended up creating something far more interesting. A fascinating time capsule of late 60s counterculture excess that's both pretentious and weirdly profound. The film builds to a literally explosive climax that has to be seen to be believed.
Then a strange voice breaks in.
Hello there, Mark. This is your ancestor, Abigail, the Witch of Salem.
If you've ever wondered what a movie made entirely out of wet dreams would look like, well, here's your answer. This psychedelic sexploitation film follows a young woman who's possessed by a witch from the fourth dimension, leading to a series of increasingly bizarre sexual encounters. The plot? I guess if you can call it that. It's basically an excuse to string together psychedelic visual effects that look like they were created by pointing a camera at a lava lamp during an electric storm. What makes this film unique is its complete disregard for conventional filmmaking. I mean, the audio frequently goes out of sync, the camera goes in and out of focus, and the editing feels like it was done by throwing film reels down a flight of stairs and then just reassembling them in random order. Yet somehow, it's captivating in its completely artistic freedom. The film exists in a strange limbo between exploitation art house experimentation, and just complete ineptitude. It's like Salvador Dali made an adult film, but he just forgot to take his medication first.
This is Avery Phillips.
Listen carefully. You will take every diamond in the store, 2 carats or bigger, and put them in your briefcase.
Who is this?
Don't talk, listen. We've got your daughter.
This grim crime thriller follows 3 kidnappers who abduct a young woman named Candy and just bury her alive with an air tube while they wait for the ransom. What they don't know is that a mute boy witnessing the kidnapping, he keeps bringing Candy food while she's buried. It's like a really dark episode of Lassie, where Timmy's fallen down a well, but Lassie is the mute kid, and Timmy, he's the kidnapping victim. What separates this film from standard exploitation fare is its surprising complex character development and genuinely shocking plot twists. Each of the kidnappers is given a distinct personality and motivation, making their eventual implosion just all the more compelling. The film doesn't shy away from brutality, but it's not mindless. There's a method to the madness, building to one of the bleakest endings in exploitation cinema. The final scene, it's going to stay with you long after the credits roll, proving that sometimes the most disturbing horror, it's not supernatural monsters, but the monstrous things regular humans do to each other.
Oh, I don't know. What do you recommend?
Have you ever had an Egyptian feast?
Why, that would be fine. That would be perfect.
Herschel Gordon Lewis changed cinema forever with this pioneering splatter film about an Egyptian caterer who just kills women and harvests their body parts for ritual sacrifice. It's basically a cooking show hosted by a serial killer. This was made for like $24,000, and Blood Feast, it introduced the world to explicit gore effects in color. It showed entrails, dismemberment, and the notorious tongue removal scene that had 1963 audiences vomiting in the aisles. The beauty of Blood Feast isn't the quality. I mean, the acting, it's wooden enough to give you like splinters, and the plot has more holes than the victims. But it's the historical significance and the gleeful boundary pushing that it went through. Lewis knew exactly what he was doing. He was creating a new subgenre of horror that prioritized shocking gore effects basically over everything else. The bright red Technicolor blood looks just like paint because it was, and the effects are crude by today's standards, but there's an almost admirable purity to how this film delivers exactly what it promised: a feast of blood. It's patient zero for the splatter film epidemic that would eventually give us everything from like Friday the 13th to Saw. Abel Ferrara's exploitation masterpiece follows a mute seamstress who, after being assaulted twice in the same day, just snaps and becomes a vigilante who targets predatory men with her .45 caliber pistol. It's like Death Wish if Charles Bronson wore red lipstick and dealt with everyday sexual harassment. What elevates this film above standard revenge exploitation is Zoe Lund's incredible silent performance and Ferrara's gritty direction that makes New York City look like a concrete hell. The film builds a fascinating character arc as our protagonist evolves from traumatized victim to empowered avenger to someone increasingly unable to distinguish between genuine threats and innocent interactions. I mean, the famous Halloween party finale where she dresses as a nun while dispensing her particular brand of bullet-based judgment, it's both visually striking and thematically rich. Unlike many exploitation films, Miss 45 has something genuine to say about violence, trauma, and the cycle of victimization, all while delivering the cathartic vigilante action audiences craved. This Japanese martial arts exploitation film, it was so violent, it became the first film to receive an X rating based just solely on violence rather than sexual content. Sony Chiba plays Terry Tsugi, possibly the most ruthless hero in cinema history. He's a mercenary who literally will rip your throat out if you don't pay him. The film follows Terry as he protects a billionaire's daughter from the Yakuza while also dealing with siblings who stiffed him on a prison break job. What makes this film legendary is Sony Chiba's unhinged performance and the shockingly brutal fight scenes. Unlike the grace of Bruce Lee, Chiba fights like a cornered animal, all raw ferocity and just killing intent. When he punches someone, the film cuts to an X-ray view of their skull fracturing. Let's just say the results are permanently life-altering. This director doesn't just cross the line of good taste, he obliterates it with a flying kick. The film was so influential that Quentin Tarantino referenced it extensively in True Romance and Kill Bill. It's martial arts exploitation at its most gloriously excessive, unapologetically violent, and just absolutely essential.
I am the Sadhu, master of the theater of the macabre. Tonight, we begin with torture.
Also known as the Incredible Torture Show, this notorious film follows Sardou, a theater director who performs actual torture on stage while audiences believe it's actually fake. Behind the scenes, though, he keeps the women in cages and has a diminutive assistant named Ralphus who helps with the kidnapping and the torture. This film generated incredible controversy upon release, with protests from women's groups and frequent banning. I mean, it's not really hard to see why. This film contains some of the most disturbing and explicit torture scenes ever filmed, including the infamous human dartboard scene. What makes it especially unsettling is the darkly comedic tone it maintains throughout, treating horrific acts with a carnival barker's sensibility. Director Joel M. Reed creates a world so grotesque and over the top that it almost becomes a satire of exploitation films themselves. It's the kind of film that makes you want to take a shower afterwards, but it's impossible to deny its transgressive power and lasting influence on extreme horror. Tobe Hooper's masterpiece of rural horror follows a group of friends who encounter a family of cannibals in the Texas countryside. This includes the chainsaw-wielding Leatherface. This was shot on a shoestring budget in the punishing Texas heat, with actors who are genuinely suffering through 12-hour days. The film has this documentary-like quality that makes it feel less like a movie and more like found footage from a nightmare. You know what's remarkable about Texas Chainsaw is how relatively bloodless it is compared to its reputation. The film relies on suggestion and atmosphere rather than explicit gore, creating most of its horror through sound design, editing, and the implication of violence. I mean, the dinner scene remains one of the most unbearable sequences in horror history. It's a masterclass in sustained tension and madness. Hooper's camera moves with documentary-like precision, capturing the endless Texas landscape and just making it feel like sun-baked hell where escape is impossible. The film's political subtext about deindustrialization, energy crisis, and America consuming itself gives it a depth that most exploitation films lack. I mean, elevating it from brilliant grindhouse fare to legitimate cinematic art. And that's why it's number one. You know, grindhouse cinema, it carved out territory that mainstream films, they wouldn't touch. These movies pushed boundaries that needed to be pushed. It created new genres that changed cinema forever. and it delivered experiences you simply couldn't get from Hollywood productions. Many of these films were dismissed as trash when they were released, only to be recognized decades later as groundbreaking works that influenced generations of filmmakers. Martin Scorsese, he borrowed from Blood Feast for Taxi Driver. Quentin Tarantino's entire career is essentially a love letter to Grindhouse, and it owes everything to pioneers like Tobe Hooper and Herschel Gordon Lewis. Hey, before you go, you should check out these two videos. This one right here is a great video on 70s sexploitation, and this one, it'll shamble through some of the best zombie B-movies in history. So keep it weird, folks.